important books to readers like you. And I am so excited to welcome our very special guests this evening, Angeline Boulley, as well as Courtney Summers, to celebrate the release of Angeline's thrilling and beautiful new book, The Firekeeper's Daughter. I mean, look at this beautiful book. I'm so excited. So, yeah. You can also click on the link that will drop in the chat box to get your own copies of this gorgeous book. If you haven't gotten already, or get one for a friend. They'll also include a really beautiful book plate. Thank you so much for signing these for us. And you'll get these beautiful art prints. Also, like, wow, thank you so much. While supplies last. And also check out Courtney's amazing books, just like her newest one, The Project. And also, if you have a question for our guest this evening, you can click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. And at the end of our chat, our guests will have some time to answer your questions. You can also vote on the questions you like and really want answered by clicking that thumbs up button. And as always, please remember that this is a creative, safe space, and we ask that friends be respectful of one another in their questions and comments. And thank you so much, friends, for joining us today and supporting these amazing authors and voices. So now on to the event that you're all waiting for. It is my honor to welcome storyteller and debut author Angeline Boulley. An enrolled member of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians, Angeline is a storyteller who writes about the Ojibwe community in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Angeline has had a long career in Indian education at tribal, state, and national levels, including working as the director of the Office of Indian Education at U.S. Department of Education. So she was in this area in DC for a little bit. Was our neighbor. Tonight, we are celebrating the much anticipated release of her new debut novel, of course, again, Firekeeper's Daughter. This amazing book is so great that it is no surprise that it was selected as Reese's YA Book Club new pick, as well as a soon to be adapted to TV by the Obama's production company, Higher Ground. So excited to see in these different incarnations. And this evening, Angeline is joined by critically acclaimed author Courtney Summers. Courtney is a best-selling author of several darkly thrilling YA novels, including All the Rage, Sadie, and her newest book, The Project. Love it. Her work has received numerous honors, including the Edgar Award, the John Spray Mystery Award, the Odyssey Award as well. And Courtney is also reviewed for the New York Times and is the founder of #ToTheGirls. So now it is my honor to pass on the virtual stage to you, Courtney and Angeline. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Leah. That was such a good introduction. Like, I wish these openings could just be like carried around in our pockets and then we could just have them whenever we need them. But I want to say congratulations, Angeline, on your amazing debut, The Firekeeper's Daughter. It is so beautiful. I love this book. I had the distinct honor and privilege of blurbing it, so I got to read it early, and I feel like I've just been waiting for everyone to read this and love it as much as I do, and to see all the hype surrounding it and to see the warm and positive reception. I'm just so glad that I'm not freaking out alone anymore. So I'm just so excited about it. And you've had like an extraordinary launch week. Like it's like you've hit the stratosphere. You've got the Reese Witherspoon pick, the Obama adaptation, and that's like, to release a much hyped debut is like a thing in itself, and then all these other amazing things. So I want to start off with like a therapy session and be like, how are you doing? How has it been? How do you feel? Like, how are you? Like, where are you at mentally and emotionally to just see this book you've worked on so hard and for so long to just be real and in the universe, and everyone loves it, and it's just so wonderful to see.
It feels wonderful. Let me just say that. Yeah. You know, I'm enjoying every minute of this, and you know, when the shipment of books come for signing and the book plates, and I'm just like, I can't believe I get to do this. This is like the dream, just to be able to have a book that people want, and that your story gets to be shared with people beyond right. what you ever could have. Yeah, I'm enjoying every minute of it. So.
Oh, good. Do you is it hard to stay in the moment when so many things are happening around you? Like, does it just catch up with you later, or is it just like,
it's like, as you know, publishing is like this long game.
It is.
And so your deal, you know, you get the deal, and then you have to wait a year and a half, and then you go through these massive edits and the deal with Netflix and Higher Ground Productions. That came out the same, like a week or two after the book auction, but yet we couldn't say anything.
Oh my gosh.
It's been almost a year and a half, and just, so that's the hard part about this whole experience, is when you have this incredible news that you want to share. And so basically I tell my 80-year-old mother, and I swear her to secrecy. And, and she cracks me up, because when I told her about my book deal, she was like, I'm not going to tell your dad.
Oh my God. When did your dad find out? Did he just find out this week? Like, did you keep that a secret?
When people stop them in the street and they're like, hey, I heard your daughter got some. Yeah. So, no, they couldn't be more thrilled. And I feel so fortunate. I'm 55 years old. Both of my parents are still alive. They're still vibrant. They're still like themselves, and that they get to enjoy, this with me. That I'm fortunate beyond belief, really.
There's a lot of, that just a minute. I have to take a moment. That's really sweet. I love that. What has been like the most surreal moment so far?
The weekend that they told me that Barack Obama was reading my manuscript.
I'm dying to know about that. Like, yeah, it's just like, oh, yeah, of course he is. Yeah. How do you handle that?
Faye told me that, but she didn't tell me until after the call with Higher Ground Productions, because she said, well, thank God she knew enough about me to know that I couldn't have been coherent on a call thinking about that. So yeah, she told me afterwards what was going to be happening. And so that was pretty surreal. Then I was in Walmart, and Faye called me, our agent. And then she said, can you hold? Because Tiff is going to join us, and that's my editor at Holt Books for Young Readers. And so I'm standing in the line at Walmart with my mother, and my father had just been diagnosed with COVID. So I was helping my mom shop for things, and we had just come from the hospital. And that's when Faye told me that my book had been selected by Reese Witherspoon for her young adult, for her book club. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
That's a lot to process.
And then I had to get off the phone, and then Faye messaged me later, and she said, are you okay? I think she was expecting the, oh my God. But really, it was just this high highs and low lows.
Yeah.
And so that's, and isn't that life, just
truly
wonderful things happen, and then, bad things happen, and you just try to
hold them all at the same time.
Yep, exactly. And my dad's fine.
Good. I'm sending him my best.
Everything, and he's still stubborn and ornery and all of that. So.
Is he a Taurus too?
Almost, no.
So I would love to hear about the journey of writing Firekeeper's Daughter and getting it to publication, because it's had it was 10 years in the making. Am I correct in that? And it had an interesting process, because I think Tiffany Liao, she saw it first, right? And then she saw it, and then she ended up acquiring it. She's an amazing editor. I love that. I love that kind of book ending. It's just neat. So can you walk us through how that happened?
Oh my goodness. So the Quayle Color of Children's Literature Conference in New York City, I went to it, and I had submitted my first 250 words. So it was basically like a first paragraph kind of thing. And Tiff was it was an editor and an agent, and they would put your first 250 words up on a screen, and they would give their first impressions of it. And she read my first paragraph out loud, and she was like, ooh. And she just was interested. She just had a really good reaction to it. And so I was like, note to self, make sure she is one of, the people this gets submitted to. And so, 6 months later was the book auction. Wow. And she's my editor.
feels like it's very like meant to be. I love that. It's just
There
it's
have been a
cool.
lot of that. There have been a lot of that, connections, like especially like with you here tonight. And the first time, so I love Sadie to me, and I told Faye this, I said, Sadie elevated audiobooks like out of the stratosphere of what was possible in an audiobook. And just
Macmillan did an amazing job. They were, yeah, I was like, I can't believe that's my book.
yeah. And so when I had multiple offers of representation when I was seeking an agent, and Faye had said, Faye was someone that I was, very strongly considering, and she gave me your name and another author's name and said, well, feel free to check with my current clients and ask them any questions. And that was
I remember that email.
Yeah. And I was like, I have an email from Courtney Summers. And yeah, so I'm just so glad that we get to be, agent cousins,
Siblings.
whatever that is.
Yeah, it's cool. I like it a lot too, because it means I never have to wait for the next Angeline Boulley book. I'm always going to be bugging Faye about that and getting the earliest copy that I can. If Faye, you're watching this, make note of that, please. So I'd love to talk. I'd love to talk about Daunis, because she's one of my most favorite characters that I've read about in a long time. She has such strong integrity. She's determined. She's loyal. She never backs down. There's something about the overwhelming amount of odds that are in front of her that she never shies from. She's not afraid of confrontation and doing what needs to be done for the people that she loves. But she has a very complicated interiority, like an interior life. And one of the things she says in the book, I learned there were times when I was expected to be a Fontaine and other times when it was safe to be a firekeeper. So I'd love to talk about how she exists between two worlds and navigates her identity and her culture, and just what it was like bringing her to life.
Well, originally she started out a lot like me. We both have an Ojibwe father and a non-native mother, and have always been like that, the identity issue of not enough or too much for one family member's liking, things like that. And so that really drew from personal experience. And then she is unlike me in many other ways. I am not gifted in science or math, and I've never.
Oh my God, me neither.
Yeah, and I've never played hockey either. But no, not. But I was an athlete in high school, and so I think like that drive and her being an elite athlete, I think that her tenacity and all of these qualities about her that make her this ideal confidential informant, and for her realizing all the different parts of her identity that she always felt she had to code switch or
right.
Tamper down because of who else was in the room, and for her to realize that no, everything about her makes her just this incredible woman, incredible young woman. And for her to come into that realization and own it, I just felt like we have so many young women in our tribal communities and all over. And just for them to realize that exactly who they are is amazing.
Something that I thought was like really profoundly affecting when I was reading the book was how willing she was to sort of protect the people that she loved, like both of her grandmothers, at the expense of herself, and then slowly coming to the realization that is, that she couldn't hide who she was for the benefit of others. I just thought it was like I was in tears at the end of I was in tears at many times over the course of this book. It got me so much. It was just it was like so emotionally well drawn. You just tapped into it, and I just remember closing the book and being like, wow. It's just a total wow moment. It's so good. So can you talk, what I love about Firekeeper's, there's so much I love about this book, but what I love about what it does for thrillers in the YA landscape is that I think it shows that thrillers can be very complex, multi-layered things. Like it's not just like a whodunit and a why done it. but it shows the emotional tension that runs throughout a thriller, the complicated dynamics between people and their families and their communities. Like it's and the slow burn psychological toll that these kind of investigations can take. And I just want to know what it was like to develop the thriller component. Like when did you decide to reveal what and when, and did it like, was it ever daunting? Did it ever like trip you up? And because I have a hard time with that, untangling everything and when to reveal it. I really want to know how it was for you.
Right. So I always knew the beginning, I always knew the ending, and I always knew that midpoint. But so many different drafts that I've written, I really discovered a lot of writers, they'll say, oh, I wrote 3 or 4 novels and didn't get an agent, didn't get published. For me, it was like drafts, multiple. Right. I think I had at least a dozen drafts before I really figured out what I was trying to do. And so, there was that. But I thought I was a linear writer, and I would have writer's block because I couldn't see the next step in front of me. And then it was like, I've always been like a rule follower. And then to realize that, wait, you don't have to write the next chapter. You can write the next chapter that you know. And
you just gave me heart palpitations. I am a linear writer, so I'm like, oh, this is making me sweaty.
Yep. So I could jump over
right.
and pick up the story where I knew it was going to be. And then I could work backwards. And this will like give you hives because I would edit backwards. I would start with the last chapter and go backwards. And when I was writing the mystery, the thriller part or the mystery part of it, it was, the very last chapter, the character knows everything. And so then working backwards of pacing what clues were going to come where. And for me, it just ended up making sense to edit backwards.
That's compelling, though. You make a compelling case for pushing me out of my comfort zone. That scares me a little, too. That's really cool. So do you think you're going to like continue to be like that with mysteries and thrillers, or do you think it's going to change book to book?
I know I love that writing this, what people think is a thriller, but beneath it is this deeply layered, nuanced story about identity or issues that are facing, our teens in our tribal communities, and being able to introduce certain issues in a way, and then it's dressed up as a thriller. So buy it for the thriller, but I hope you're going to be rocked by what you read, and that the book stays with you long after you close that turn that last page.
They are guaranteed that experience with this book. Like, that is a promise. So when I know you took really extra care with what elements of Native culture you were sharing and when. And I would love to know, like, when you talk about how you used windows and at some point curtains. I would love to hear more about that. I've been watching like interviews with you online, and I just want to hear more.
Okay. Well, Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop wrote this essay, and it was about how books for children and teens serve as windows, mirrors by which they can see their experience reflected, and sliding glass doors where they can step through and experience another perspective. And then Dr. Debbie Reese, who does the American Indian Children's Literature blog, she has kind of taken that windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors and has said, and some of those windows need curtains. And that's especially true when you're writing about your culture, because there are things that are not intended for outside of your community, outside of ceremony. And so making sure that I was very confident of where I drew that line. So a fade to black, and just knowing that even if someone else has written about something that happens in ceremony, I knew that I did not want to include that. And I think every Indigenous author has to draw that line for themselves. and then be prepared to defend it, because inevitably someone will draw that line differently and want to know why you did what you did. So
yeah, I have a lot of conversations with writers, and it's always like, if you're going to make a choice, you have to make sure you know how to talk about the reasoning behind it. And it feels like that should be like a pervasive quality in like anyone's work. If you're going to write anything, you should know why you're doing that and what you want to be reflected on the page. Okay,
exactly.
so this. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that comes up in the editing process. When I worked with the editor, Tiffany Liao, she would say, well, would you consider this? Or what about this? And it was like, I had to be clear about, this is why this needs to be in the story, is because of this and this and this. And then it was like, but wait, couldn't it happen in a different place in the story and give some breathing room and do, where I could still hold true to why I wanted it in the story, but listen to her feedback about how I did it and where it came in the story, and being open to that. And so I really think that you have to know your story and your choices, but also listen, and have that connection with an editor who gets your work and wants to have those conversations. And so I feel so incredibly fortunate to have that situation. Yeah.
Good. It's such an interesting relationship between an editor and an author, because you really have to, I mean, over time I've learned that it's, not everything is necessarily prescriptive. When my editor is making an edit, she's asking me to think differently about the work, not necessarily to think so literally about what she's saying, but how to take the spirit of what she's offering me and to make it something better than it is. So is there anything was there a scene that came to like near the end of the drafting process with Tiffany that was like just something you're so happy that you didn't have before, like an edit that just blew your mind and that you loved? That isn't a spoiler.
That isn't a spoiler. Okay, yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
My first conversation with Tiff, when I was talking with a number of different editors and hearing their editorial vision for my story, and Tiff spoke so quickly and had such a clear vision of the story. And I felt like I had like a too slow of a beginning, but I didn't know how to fix that. And she said, well, all of these hockey players are going to be much more memorable as suspects. And so why don't you focus on the first act being about this, and the second act is where you're introducing all of these suspects. And it was like, oh my God, that's it. That is the golden idea. And so just that's like the best example I can think of how she just wowed me and let me, where I could just see my work in a different way, and it made sense, but it was still my work.
Right.
And yeah, so that's the example I like to share.
I did not guess the mystery at all. I was like, what is happening? I was on tenterhooks about it, and I didn't guess it at all. And when I got to like all the reveals, I was like I wish I could have had like a camera on my face or something because it was so gratifying. It was so gratifying. So you did some like really interesting research for this book, did you not? Did I read that you you made meth? Did I read that somewhere?
I learned how to make meth.
You learned, okay. I was like, okay, so, but you were the only civilian in this like class? It was like a bunch of, was it FBI agents?
No, it was state.
No, okay. That's still cool. That's like still amazing.
It was State Police Academy, and I was able to attend a workshop on making meth and identifying clandestine meth labs. And I was the only non-law enforcement person able to take that class. And, I just research. When you write a book, I wanted to write this plausible, credible, authentic story. And, most people are never going to know all the meth details, but I guess I just wanted to make sure for that person out there who knows, that they would be like, ooh, she got that right. So
I love that. But it's true though, you do have to do it doesn't matter if the reader knows, but you have to know because you don't know
Yeah.
how you'll need to talk about it later. That's cool though. That is cool.
I
So
also
like,
had a friend, I'm sorry, I also had a
no, it's
friend
okay.
who introduced me to a retired FBI agent, and he's
That's so cool.
native and had been at Waco and Oklahoma City.
Whoa.
And we met and hit it off, and he told me so many stories, and then he introduced me to an FBI agent. And so when you do research and you meet those subject matter experts and you establish credibility and a bond, and they know that you're not going to
Right.
use their stories in a way that's harmful, that you really are trying to tell a compelling story, it opens the doors for more people, and it just, so I thank everyone that helped me uh, on this with this story.
Like I am no expert in any of these things. So I was like, this seems like she knows something. She went to a class. She did something cool. And then I saw it in an interview. I was like, that is so cool. Most of my writing is just like my research is just sitting in front. I don't do anything that cool.
No, your research about cults, I'm like, I would have joined that. I would have joined the Unity Project. I would have been like, ooh, I wonder if Lev Warren will, I wonder if he's gonna, if he would have looked at me twice. Just the way that you wrote that story and made people question everything that you thought about cults, and it's like, but wait, they're doing all of these good things.
Well,
And
thank you. That's a high compliment from someone who likes so good. Okay, so I already asked you this because I was so excited. I was like, what was your favorite part of the journey so far? But then you're like, Barack Obama read my book. Like, I don't mean to circle back to that, but I'm like, that is so cool.
it is
Do you have any hopes for the adaptation? Like, have you got anything in mind for like actors or how you'd like to see it play out?
well, I was asked if I wanted to be a writer on the project, and I did
Ooh.
not.
Oh, really?
No, I have too much. I have respect for screenwriters, and I'm not willing to devote the time and energy to become a screenwriter. I would
Right.
prefer to tell my stories, work on the stories that I want to tell, and so I will leave that to the screenwriters for the series. But I will be a script consultant, and I
Oh,
will be
cool.
an executive producer, but I will not be casting. I will not be,
Yeah.
and that's what happens, when you do option the movie rights, is there is
Right.
that kind of letting your baby out in the world, and um, trusting that you have good partners, good collaborators that are share your vision and aren't going to disrespect or
Right.
mishandle that. And that's
Well,
how I feel.
yeah. I'm like sure you made the right choice because like you every part of this book has been constructed with such an incredible amount of care from like the work itself to the cover. The cover is like
Oh my gosh, I'm so
so
glad
extraordinary.
so glad that you brought that up. The cover is beautiful, and in person, like to feel it, like the
Yes, it's
gloss of
tactile.
it,
It's so nice.
and it sparkles. So the cover art was designed art. The art director for Macmillan Children's Publishing Group is Rich Dees, and he felt very strongly that it needed to be an Anishinaabe artist. And so he found Moses Lunham, who is Ojibwe, and he's from Kettle and Stony Point, Ontario. And Moses read an early manuscript, and him, I just think it needs to be the standard of pu- publishers working with Indigenous authors, and knowing that there is so much that an Indigenous artist brings to the
Yes.
project. And I'm very appreciative of that
And
collaboration.
the level of exposure that this book is getting and everyone's seeing this art and it's gorgeous. I love it so much.
Yeah.
So I'm I don't know if I can ask you this, but I guess I'll find out. Are you allowed to talk about what you're working on next? I know sometimes that's a loaded question, but are you?
Okay, yes. So my deal with Macmillan was a 2-book deal. And if book 1 was Indigenous Nancy Drew, book 2 is Indigenous Lara Croft. Except Instead of raiding tombs, the main character is taking back ancestral remains that are in museums
That is,
and private collections to bring them back home. And in the course of one of her heists, things go very badly.
of
And so
course. I mean, they have to. You have to write her out of that.
that's what happens. You trip over a dead body while you're stealing, while you're taking back ancestral remains, and that's just what happens. So,
That's what, of course. I mean, oh my God. I
of course,
love
you
our.
stumble upon a murder scene. So yeah, I'm just having fun researching and
Did I
working.
read that we get to see some Firekeeper's daughter characters in this?
Yes,
Good.
you will see familiar characters make appearances. So
That makes me so happy. I can't even tell you how happy that makes me. Oh, good. Okay, so I think we have some questions. If we can get Leah back on here and we'll start taking audience questions. This was so much fun. Hi, Leah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could listen to that forever. That was amazing. Thank you both so much, Courtney, for your great questions, and Angeline, thank you. So I see some really great questions in the chat, so let's dive in. You guys ready?
yes.
Yes.
Do it. So our first one is from Kelsey, and Kelsey asks, I read a quote, and this is for Angeline. I read a quote from an interview you gave about not putting a glossary in the book because it's essentially catering to a white audience, which I really loved. Could you speak a little bit more about including Indigenous language in the novel? Were there any concerns from your publishing team about that?
You know, when I said that, there are some people who took issue with it. Some readers who took issue with what I said. But what I will say is that I wanted this story. I wanted to have the Anishinaabe Moen, our Ojibwe language, be very organic in the story, and that you would figure out what the words were through context. If I did my job as an author, you would know exactly what these words are from what is going on in the scene and in that dialogue. And so I really felt like that's how I wanted the language to be, was to have that very natural, intuitive kind of feeling, rather than, I felt like a glossary would take people out of the story, flipping pages back and forth. And really that's what informed my creative decision.
No, I agree. I think you did a great job, that it really flowed so
Yeah,
much to the book. I listened to the audiobook too, and just like, it was so amazing. Just to plug.
Isabella Starr LeBlanc, I adore that girl. I adore her. She sounded the way Daunis sounded in my head when I listened to her audition. Yeah, I just think she added so much to the audiobook. And I'm a huge, I listen to more books than I read. And so yeah, it was very important for me that the audiobook just get it right.
Yeah, it was amazing. Move on to our next one. Our next one's from Barb, and Barb asks, other than buying the book, what are other ways we can support Native authors?
You know, buying their books is great, but requesting them from libraries is another way that it doesn't cost money, but it lets libraries know that there are readers out there who want to read stories by Native authors. And so that's something. And then also, if you've read a book, mine or others, review it. You know, if you loved it, give it a 5-star rating and review it. It doesn't need to be a huge review, but tell people what you loved about it, especially if you are an Indigenous person, or if you appreciated the Indigenous, learning more about an Indigenous culture. That is something that you can do that doesn't cost any money, but oh my gosh, it can really help those Indigenous authors to, you know, have better ratings and have more of a following, and, you know, gain some attention, much deserved attention.
Can we talk a little bit about the Macmillan campaign? It did such a great job of uplifting Native creators. Like the influencer box came with makeup and these amazing earrings. That was incredible. Just every step of the way, you've been uplifting voices, and it's been wonderful to see.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, Courtney, because Macmillan, they have been incredible throughout this process. And they asked me, they said, we'd like to do this promo box and we're looking for different products. And they had, you know, like a list of products. And I was like, well, I know of these earrings that I really like that are strawberry earrings, and they're by a native artist. And then the lipstick, because that plays a central cheekbone beauty. Yeah.
Yes.
And it was like supporting Native women owned businesses who their products tied into the story. And it was just this incredible opportunity. And I was very appreciative of Macmillan paying attention to that and having that be very important to them. And so I just, yeah, I cannot speak more highly of my publisher.
That's so cool.
I love that. That's so amazing. Let's go on to our next one is from Sadie. No, it's Courtney. Sadie asks, what novels would you say Firekeeper's daughter is in conversation with? What novels are its lineage?
That's so hard, because when I was writing this book, I was like, you know, and you have to figure out in your query letter to prospective agents what your comps are, your comparable titles. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't even know what genre I would say that this book is, because there's a little bit of this and there's some of this, but really at its core, it's this. And I didn't really, I kind of questioned that. And then I guess that was validated when Faye did the submission letter to editors and was like, this is genre bending. Like, this is, you know, this cannot be so neatly defined. And so that was encouraging. Like, okay, it wasn't just me having a hard time coming up with comps. It really was hard to, but there's things about it, like Angie Thomas, The Hate You Give, and they always say, do not comp to a super popular book. But her story really, you know, the code switching that Star does at her private school and then in her community and at her dad's grocery store, like I could relate to, you know, Daunis can relate to that, you know, how she is with her Fontaine relatives and how she is with her Firekeeper relatives. And so that was very much relevant. So, yep.
Yeah, I love that. It really is everything. And I love that it doesn't really fit a box, because there's the need for how amazing this book is. So thank you so much.
Well, and I think too that sometimes maybe I'm glad that I am the age that I am and have the life experience that I have, and I'm confident of the story I wanted to tell, because someone had given me some advice that first-time authors always try to do so much. They bite off more than they can chew, and they want their first novel to be like all things. And really, would you consider writing a smaller story? And I was like, no, I'm in my 50s. Like, this book might be it. I am going to make it epic. I'm going to make it everything I want it to be. And having that confidence to say that and feel that, you know, maybe if I were younger and someone I, you know, completely respected said that, I would be like, oh, okay, I guess I better tone it down. And so, yeah, I hope that other people who watch this and people who write the story that is in you, write it the way that you want. Just go for it. And listen, when you get that advice, you just know the stuff that resonates with you. And the stuff that doesn't, you know what, just, you can leave that behind for someone else.
Love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this amazing place. And it really is everything. There's just so, I feel like reading it again, you'll get something different out of it. So our next question is from Trisha. Trisha asks, to you, what do you want the reader to walk away with when they finish the last sentence?
I want that. Well, I want them like crying and like wiping tears and everything too. But I want them to realize how little they knew about about Native teens, and why don't they why why don't they know more about Indigenous history and tribal communities, and you know that's, I guess, we have dynamic stories to tell. We are still here, and that's what I want readers to take away from is we're not relics of the past, and to really have an appreciation and respect for Indigenous people who are still here, because there are so many who are not.
So important. Our next one, we have time for a few more.
Sure.
The next one is from Charlie. Charlie asks, have either of you read Moon of the Crusted Snow by, I'm not the author. Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
And if so, what did you think? He also didn't include a glossary, but the Indigenous language was very natural and could be understood through the context clues like you did, like you mentioned.
I read his book. I loved it. So Moon of the Crusted Snow is set in the future, the near future, and there's some catastrophe that's happened in the States, and the Ojibwe communities in Canada, the First Nations, they know something's happened, but they don't know what, and like people will trickle in and say, and it's this like, what happened, and I loved it, and I listened to the audiobook, and the speaker, he got the Ojibwe words. They were familiar to me, and it was a comfort to me to hear the language in a story and to have it feel so natural. And so I love that. I love that book.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And I just, like to not have our words be italicized and to not have a glossary and to not, I'm very thankful for being an Indigenous writer now, and the attention that's being paid to how we choose to tell our stories.
Oh, that's so important.
Yeah.
I feel like that was so impactful, and I'm going to pivot to another side of this, because our next question is from Mary, and this is for both of you. We're going to address the other side, so the thriller side. So what thrillers were formative for both of you?
Courtney, you want to go first?
Oh, you go first, Dad.
You wanted a moment of break.
I liked Christopher Pike growing up. He was kind of twisted, and he was sort of like on the cusp of young adult novel. Well, he was a young adult novels, but when I look back at some of those books, they were a little bit risky and kind of bold and daring, and they were like, ooh, I can push a limit here. I liked reading those when I was too young to read them. And I also like Alfred Hitchcock thrillers more the movie side, but there was just something so beautifully taught and suspenseful and again multi-layered. I love thrillers that are more than just thrillers, and that's why I love Angeline's book, and those are the kind of stories I like to explore in my own work. So anything like that, they were part of my formative years and left a huge impression on me.
Fifth grade me read I Am the Cheese by Robert
Oh, that's so good.
And was like, oh my God, what did I just read? Because what I thought I read, and then that last chapter just kind of throws you, and it's dark. It's so dark. And then I read a lot of Lois Duncan, and she always had these like supernatural twist or something. And to me, it was like eye-opening that that the story could be told in such a way that it transcended reality, that it made you think about the things that we don't know about. And
Yeah.
I really loved that. And Shirley Jackson, just gosh, dark and twisty, I'm there. So yeah.
No, me too. So our next one is from Trisha. And Trisha asks, what was the impetus for creating this character and telling this particular story? I feel like there's so many different layers, but this particular story.
Sure. Daunis, Daunis translates in the language to daughter. And my whole career, I've worked in tribal communities and worked to improve education for Native students. And, the teens that I worked with, I love them. I root for them. I would see the ways that they were treated in public school systems, and I would see, how incredible they were in the face of so many obstacles that people just don't know. They just do not know what our students are facing. And I just felt like if they read a book and could identify with a character and maybe have someone talk about identity and prejudice and all these different things, I just to be seen in a story can change the way that you view the world and yourself, your place in the world. That's what the best books do, is that we feel seen. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And that's what I feel like hopefully this book will do for so many. It's so important. And there'll be more. So our last question will be just always a fun one to do. So this last one's from Rebecca, and I love asking as well. So what are you both reading? And for Angeline, do you have any recommendations for Indigenous authors particularly to recommend as well?
Okay, I just finished listening to Alatsoe by Darcy Little Badger.
So amazing! Oh,
I love the art book, like Kirby.
And the art is like,
yes, exactly. And it's just like, there's vampires and there's this, but and pistachio ice cream and her dead dog that she still can call and it comes to her, and and it's just this incredible story. And I just have so much respect for the art, her craft and what she did in telling this story. I always give shout outs to Marcy Rendon, her Cash Black Bear mystery series, starting with Murder on the Red River. And Marcy writes the way that Anishinaabe storytellers tell stories, where they're describing the setting and what you're seeing and what you're feeling. That's how she writes. And so you feel like you are right there. Erica T. Worth, she's another writer who is so, I feel, underappreciated. And her book, Crazy Horse's Girlfriend, I think that should be taught in chapter 1 of her book should be taught in every MFA creative writing program in the country, because it just starts, it's like, bam, right in your face of this character and her voice. And so yeah, those I could go on and on about the Indigenous authors that I just think do, Kelly Jo Ford. A lot.
Courtney, do you want to share one that you're reading now?
I just finished, it's for research purposes, but I don't want people to guess, or they won't guess what I'm writing about, but it was for research purposes. It was Marilyn Monroe's, it was called Fragments, and it was just a book of her notes leading up to the end of her life, and it was very devastating. And I'm in the middle of, I don't know if I can say, it's a new Tiffany Jackson book, and very good. I'll leave it at
A
that.
thriller author.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Tiffany Jackson, Monday's Not Coming. I
So
read
good.
that. Oh my God. I read that book and then the ending, I'm like, wait, what did I?
Right?
And I had
Her
to
twist.
again because the ending changed the entire story.
Every time I pick up one of her books, I'm just like, what are you going to do to me now? Because I
Yeah.
never know what turn it's going to take. And I'm always happy that I went on the ride, but I'm always like white knuckling the book because I'm like, what's going to happen?
The book that I'm so excited about that's coming out, it's by 6 Black women authors.
Blackout.
Yes.
Blackout. And it's like one blackout in the city, and then it's told by 6, like Angie Thomas, Tiffany Jackson,
Yes.
you know, these like powerhouses, and they each are telling different stories that are all connected because all of the characters are connected through this blackout. And I cannot wait. I think
so
that is
excited.
incredible to have.
The cover is beautiful. Do you see the cover?
No, I haven't seen the cover yet.
It's good.
That is the book I am most excited to come. Yeah. Yes.
So many books that we're all excited for, and so many great books that you all have to be reading too, especially this one. So back to saying, like, you're saying all these amazing other thriller authors, but you guys really so nuanced and such amazing books. So thank you so much for sharing your words. Do you have any last things before we start wrapping up to share?
Books are good medicine. There's a lot of healing. There's a lot of information and a lot of comfort.
Thank you. That's a perfect way.
Love that.
Medicine we all need.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Thank you.
Congratulations, Angeline, on your debut. This is an amazing book. I'm so glad everyone will get to read it.
Thank you.
And thank you, Politics and Prose. Leah, thank you. Margaret, thank you. Everyone, thank you.
Thank you, Politics and Prose. I love you. I miss being in DC because of your store. Like, I miss you.
We miss you all too. That's sadly all the time we have for questions. Thank you everyone so much for contributions. I mean, I have to thank you both again, Angeline and Courtney, for joining us this evening, sharing your important stories, your insights, and of course, everyone, viewers, for joining us today. Don't forget, you can still click on in the link in the chat box to get your own copy of The Firekeeper's Daughter. Don't forget, you're going to get these beautiful, thank you, Angeline, for signing these and these prints so you can get additional art from that amazing artist that did the cover while supplies last. Also check out Courtney's books, like her newest one, The Project. And you can find out about more events on our website for updated listings, and follow us in the Kids and Teen Department on social media. We'll throw that handle up in the chat as well. Also, you can check out our past events on our Politics and Prose YouTube page, as well as this one too. And thanks again, everyone. As Angeline just said, like, books are really great medicine. I was actually going to say that anyway, because that was in your author's note. It just really hit me so hard. So thank you so much. So I hope you all keep reading widely, expand your world, and exploring new ones. Share those stories and stay safe. So thank you so much.